Every 2 minutes, a child dies from malaria. That is 700 children a day, over 250,000 a year. In the 1970s, a Chinese scientist discovered a cure. It was extraordinarily effective, derived from an ancient herbal remedy. But for 30 years, the Western world largely ignored it. Not because it didn't work, but because it came from a plant. No one could patent it. No Western pharmaceutical company could make billions from it. So millions died, while the cure sat unused. Episode 5. The malaria cure that was too cheap to sell. 1967. The Vietnam War is raging. Malaria is killing more soldiers than bullets. Both sides are desperate for better treatments. The Chinese government launches a secret military project. Find a cure for malaria. They assign it to a young pharmaceutical chemist named Tu Yu. Tu Yu does something unusual. Instead of developing a new synthetic drug, she looks backward to ancient Chinese medical texts. In a 1,600-year-old text, she finds a reference to sweet wormwood, Artemisia annua, used to treat fever. What Tu Yu did was brilliant. She took traditional knowledge, applied modern scientific methods, and isolated the active compound, artemisinin. After testing over 200 different extraction methods, Tu Yu successfully isolated artemisinin in 1972. She tested it on malaria parasites. They died. Quickly. Artemisinin worked differently from existing malaria drugs. The parasites could not easily develop resistance. It was faster acting, more effective. Chinese researchers tested it on malaria patients, over 90% cure rate, minimal side effects. It was revolutionary. But there was a problem. This happened during the Cultural Revolution. China was isolated, and Western pharmaceutical companies were not interested in a plant-based drug they could not patent. Through the 1970s and 80s, Western drug companies dominated malaria treatment. Chloroquine was the main drug, patented, profitable. But malaria parasites were developing resistance to chloroquine. By the 1980s, resistant malaria was spreading. Millions were dying. New treatments were desperately needed. There was a bias. Chinese research during that era was not taken seriously by Western scientists. We dismissed their findings. More importantly, it comes from a plant. You can't patent nature. Anyone could grow Artemisia annua, extract artemisinin, make the drug. There was no way to establish a monopoly. The pharmaceutical business model requires exclusivity. Patent law is clear. You cannot patent a naturally occurring substance. You can patent a synthetic process, but not the basic compound from a plant. So Western pharmaceutical companies invested in synthetic malaria drugs instead. Drugs they could patent. Drugs that would be profitable. It is one of the great scandals of modern medicine. Through the 1980s and 90s, malaria killed between 1 and 2 million people every year, mostly children in Africa. Chloroquine stopped working. Our best drugs failed. I was working in Tanzania in the 1990s. We would see children come in with severe malaria. We would give them our best drugs, and we would watch them die, because the parasites were resistant. Meanwhile, artemisinin was saving lives in China, but the World Health Organization did not recommend it globally, partially because artemisinin was cheap. The WHO is influenced by pharmaceutical companies when you are deciding which drugs to recommend. Economic interests play a role, even if no one admits it. Expensive drugs generated revenue. Foreign aid would buy expensive patented drugs from Western companies, a system where aid money ended up as pharmaceutical profits. If countries switched to cheap artemisinin, that revenue would dry up. Between 1972 and 2000, approximately 35 million people died from malaria. We will never know how many could have been saved. Finally, in 2000, things began to change. The WHO could no longer ignore the evidence. In 2001, ACTs became the standard treatment worldwide. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Malaria deaths dropped significantly. The drug that had been ignored for 30 years was finally saving lives on a massive scale. Countries started growing Artemisia annua. Local production meant cheaper drugs, less dependence on Western pharmaceutical companies. It is still the most effective treatment we have. In 2015, Tu Yu won the Nobel Prize, recognition for a discovery made 43 years earlier. Artemisinin is a gift from traditional Chinese medicine to the world. Tu Yu's gift could have been given 30 years earlier, but it wasn't. Because it couldn't be patented, because it was too cheap, because it didn't fit the business model. If artemisinin-based treatments had been adopted in 1972 instead of 2001, tens of millions of lives could potentially have been saved. Follow the money. It's always about the money. Today, pharmaceutical companies are trying to develop synthetic derivatives, patentable versions. Not necessarily better, just patentable. The medical benefit is marginal, but the profit potential is substantial. Meanwhile, the original artemisinin from the plant continues to save lives. It is off patent, affordable, available as a generic drug worldwide. The best medicine is the one growing in fields for thousands of years. Today, a child in Africa gets artemisinin and likely survives, but their older siblings might not have been so lucky. If they got sick in the 1990s, they might have died, while the cure existed, unused. Tu Yu is 94 years old now. She never profited from artemisinin. She gave it to the world. Children who wouldn't have survived a decade ago are alive today, because we finally accepted a cure that was too cheap to sell. Artemisinin is proof that our pharmaceutical system is broken. The most effective malaria cure in history was ignored because there was not enough profit in it. How many other cures are we ignoring right now for the same reason?